Do you ever feel immediate anxiety and a roller coaster of emotions at the mere thought of having to go out and attend a social event, even when you know the people that are going to be there? Even though you might want to attend these things and go out, those fears of being judged, saying the wrong thing, or feeling awkward creeps in. It's completely overwhelming, and it's so much easier to avoid these things altogether. Now the thing is, social anxiety goes far beyond just feeling shy or nervous. It's actually a really powerful fear that affects your personal and your professional life, and it's so misunderstood by other people who don't experience it. So in this video, I'm going to explain 6 telltale signs of social anxiety so you can spot the warning signs, and importantly, I'm going to explain 3 ways that you can begin to beat it. So stick around to the end of the video. I was Andrew Major, clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. So let's start by understanding exactly what social anxiety is. How do we define it? Well, social anxiety is characterised by a marked fear or anxiety about one or more social situations in which you're being exposed to possible scrutiny by other people. Now that could be any social interaction that you're having, maybe where you have to have a conversation or meet unfamiliar people, or perhaps where you might be observed even, such as when you're eating or having to speak up in front of other people. And social anxiety is also marked by a fear that you're going to behave in a way that will be judged negatively by the people around you, which could be humiliating or even embarrassing. And therefore, social situations almost always provoke a fear of anxiety, which means you avoid social situations or you just endure them with great difficulty. And your fear or anxiety is usually out of proportion to the dangers being posed by that situation itself. And the anxious feelings are persistent, and they tend to last for 6 months or more. And because of this worry and that fear, it impacts your professional and your personal life, and that influences the way you feel and you behave in everyday life. So let's take a deeper look at the 6 signs of social anxiety so you can spot the warning signs for yourself or those close to you. The first sign is that of feeling self-conscious and judged. And social anxiety gives you a real fear of that, because you might just feel like there's a constant spotlight shining on you, and that makes you self-conscious and afraid of making mistakes. It means that that fear controls you and holds you back from feeling able to express yourself authentically, and that really stops you participating in those social situations. And those fears of being judged and criticised can mean that your brain goes into overdrive, and that activates your amygdala, and that triggers your stress response. And that makes you more sensitive to perceived threats, whether they're real or imagined. So it amplifies your anxiety, and that can lead to a really overwhelming desire to remove yourself from that situation and avoid things altogether, so you're escaping that discomfort. Now remember that your brain is a really powerful thing in these situations, and despite you feeling like this, often when you're able to take a step back and look at the situation differently, most people often are preoccupied with their own concerns and their own worries. And the thing is, these fears of judgment are often rooted in negative self-beliefs and a tendency to perceive social situations as more threatening than they really are. So one thing you can do is to try challenging yourself on negative talk, those thoughts that you hear. Really challenge that negative talk. Recognize your unique qualities. What makes you special? Challenge your negative assumptions by seeking evidence that contradicts your fears, and that will help you shift your focus away from the negative thought cycle into the more positive part of your mind. The next sign is a really overwhelming fear of social situations. Now, of course, this is no surprise with social anxiety, but that overwhelming fear really does hold you back, and it may be things like social gatherings such as parties or even everyday interactions. It might even be that one-to-one with your manager. You just find yourself feeling anxious and nervous just in the anticipation of that thing happening, like a real knot in your stomach, that tightness as the situation approaches, and that leaves you dreading the thought of having to face people or even engage in a conversation. And when this happens, your mind might flood with worries about being judged, saying the wrong thing, or feeling embarrassed in some way. And this fear leads on to avoidance behaviours where you actually start skipping events, finding excuses to stay at home. And you might even decide to isolate yourself in this situation, so you remove yourself from social interactions altogether, choosing to retreat to the comfort and safety of your own space. Now, of course, while it might provide some temporary relief, It means long term that you're preventing yourself from building connections, experiencing new things, and enjoying life. The thing is, avoidance reinforces negative beliefs, and that erodes your confidence, and it has a really negative impact on your self-esteem too. But by gradually challenging yourself, challenging those avoidance behaviours, you can rewire your brain's responses and develop healthier coping strategies. Stepping outside of your comfort zone, even in small ways, like attending social gatherings with a really supportive friend, for example, someone that understands your anxiety, and that can lead to nice positive steps towards change and feeling more confident. So just taking that first step in a small way really begins that process of change. The next sign is a persistent worry about social performance, and this is really closely linked to fears of being judged and criticised. It's that persistent worry about your social performance. So you might find yourself being constantly preoccupied with thoughts of saying the wrong thing, behaving awkwardly, or perhaps even being judged by others. Now, this excessive worry creates a cycle of anxiety for you, and that makes it difficult to fully engage in social situations too, and that means that it's difficult to enjoy that present moment. And you end up analysing every word, every action, searching for potential mistakes or embarrassing moments. And this hyper-focus on your performance magnifies your anxiety, leading to self-doubt and an ongoing fear about being scrutinised. So it's no wonder that it impacts your confidence, self-esteem, and overall well-being as a result. Remember, nobody's perfect, and actually making mistakes is a normal part of being human. Instead of constantly focusing on potential errors, try to be present in that moment and engage fully in conversations and activities. Again, continue to challenge your negative thoughts by questioning their validity. Replace them with a more balanced perspective. So practice positive self-talk, and that's a really good way to raise your self-esteem. Tell yourself, I like myself. I like myself, I can do it, I can do it. That really counteracts self-doubt and propels you forward with patience and repetition. You can overcome that negative focus. The next sign is real difficulty initiating or maintaining conversations. And this social anxiety aspect comes up often with my clients when I work with them one-to-one. Because when they're going somewhere, that thought of having to start or even maintain a conversation can be completely overwhelming. That worry in itself can leave you feeling totally tongue-tied, unsure of what to say next, or struggling to keep a conversation going as you overthink what to say next. It raises your stress response, and that fear of saying something wrong or being perceived as boring can cause your mind to go completely blank, your heart to race, and that makes it really challenging in that moment to express yourself and to engage in anything meaningful. You might notice other physical symptoms like increased heart rate, sweating, or even a lump in your throat. Now, a really helpful way to help yourself here is to prepare and mentally rehearse certain situations in a nicely positive way. See yourself talking and responding to people in certain ways. Maybe you can prepare some conversation starters or topics in advance, and that alleviates the pressure on you. Practice active listening, for example, by showing genuine interest in other people's thoughts. And you can use non-verbal cues like eye contact and body language to convey engagement too. And that means also that you arrive in these situations nicely prepared, feeling more ready. And that means you'll feel calmer and more in control. Your interactions will be more positive, and that means you gradually feel more confident in these situations too. The next sign is negative self-image and self-criticism. Now, you may well constantly be judging yourself really, really harshly, magnifying perceived flaws and comparing yourself unfavorably to other people. Now, this negative self-perception can really significantly impact your self-esteem, your confidence, and your overall well-being. And in the brain, negative self-image and self-criticism activates your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. The amygdala triggers the fear response, amplifying feelings of self-doubt and anxiety. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for self-reflection, evaluation. That becomes hyperactive, fueling self-critical thoughts and reinforcing negative beliefs about yourself. So if you're struggling with negative self-image and self-criticism, you might notice certain signs and experience specific emotions too. These can include feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and a constant inner voice that criticizes your every move. You may feel a persistent sense of negativity and really harshly judge yourself for perceived flaws or mistakes, And these thoughts and emotions can be overwhelming and impact your self-esteem, confidence, and your overall well-being. Now, to overcome negative self-image and self-criticism, I want you to practice self-compassion by treating yourself with kindness and understanding. Challenge negative beliefs about yourself by seeking out the evidence to contradict them, and focus on your strengths and your positive qualities. Surround yourself with supportive people who uplift and encourage you. I want you to celebrate progress instead of seeking out perfection, encouraging yourself with your positive self-care, and really nurture your physical and your emotional well-being. The next sign is a constant fear that other people will notice your nervousness or your anxiety at these social situations. And this is really common. It's very distressing too, because you become really hyper-focused on how you're appearing to the people around you in these social situations. So you might start to become really aware of physical things like blushing and sweating, trembling, and you might believe these things are really glaringly obvious to the people around you too. And this fear stems from a deep concern about being negatively evaluated and your potential for being in an embarrassing situation. The worry intensifies as you imagine what other people are looking at, and that can lead to you scrutinizing every move you make, leading to feelings of inadequacy and a strong desire to avoid the social situations altogether. Now, this constant fear can be really crippling, and it affects so many areas of your life. The fear, being perceived as weak or socially inept, can really undermine your self-esteem, leading to a negative cycle of self-criticism and increased anxiety. Remember to practice mindful acceptance of your anxiety. Be kind to yourself. Know it's a common emotion, and just challenge anxiety, those thoughts, by focusing on the present moment. Normalizing your anxiety is a natural human response. Use relaxation techniques and visualize successful social interactions, and that builds your self-assurance. So how can you better manage your social anxiety? Now, it can be a challenging process, but taking small steps is the key to success here, because that leads to significant progress. So here are 3 things that I know from personal experience of working with clients really makes a big difference. Now, the first is reducing the impact of stress and anxiety. Now, some helpful strategies here include practicing relaxation techniques like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation or mindfulness meditation, and engaging in regular physical exercise can be really beneficial too, because it really releases endorphins, and that helps reduce your overall stress levels. Now, of course, getting enough sleep, maintaining a balanced diet, and avoiding excessive caffeine or stimulants can contribute to a more stable mood and improved ability to cope with anxiety. The next thing is noticing self-talk and challenge negative thought patterns. Now, this is a big help, because becoming aware of your internal dialogues is really crucial in overcoming social anxiety. Really pay attention to the thoughts that run through your mind when you really want to engage in those social situations. Instead of hearing that voice, tell yourself, I like myself, I like myself, and that really helps you shift your perspective and raise your self-esteem. The next thing which really helps is gradual exposure. Allow yourself to experience the anxiety while staying in that situation. You'll begin to feel better as things calm down, and as you feel more comfortable, you can gradually progress to more challenging situations. Now, the process of gradual exposure helps build confidence and demonstrates that anxiety lessens over time, and that leads to a reduction in fear and avoidance behaviours. And that's just what I explained in this video here. So you can go and watch that now, and I look forward to seeing you there.